Ayana had always felt different. From the moment she was born, there was something unique about her, something that set her apart from the other children in her tribe. She was raised in a small, tight-knit indigenous community that lived in the heart of the American Midwest. The tribe valued traditions and a sense of unity. Everyone was expected to follow the same customs, live by the same rules, and look the same. But Ayana didn't fit the mold, and from a very young age, she began to feel the weight of that difference. Her tribe was known for its deep-rooted traditions that focused on physical strength, beauty, and conformity. Women, in particular, were expected to meet certain physical standards that symbolized health and fertility. The elders believed that the way a person looked was a reflection of their inner strength, and anyone who didn't fit the ideal image was seen as weak or unnatural. Ayana's body was simply not like the other women's. She was taller, with broader shoulders, and her curves were fuller. Where others had delicate features, she had a more muscular build. When Ayana was a young girl, the adults didn't say much about her appearance. But as she grew older, the whispers started. Some of the older women in the tribe would call her the strange one behind her back. It wasn't done in a cruel way, but there was a clear discomfort in their voices. The children didn't understand, but they could see how the adults treated her differently. Ayana began to feel like an outsider, even though she had done nothing wrong. As Ayana entered her teenage years, the teasing became more overt. The other girls her age would make fun of her broad shoulders and long limbs, calling her a warrior or manly, as if it were something to be ashamed of. They laughed when she wore the traditional dresses that were supposed to be flowing and soft, because they didn't fit her frame the same way they fit everyone else. Ayana could hear their mocking voices, and it hurt more than she let on. Despite the teasing, Ayana did her best to stay strong. She loved her tribe deeply and wanted nothing more than to be accepted. She learned their ways, respected their elders, and worked hard to contribute to the community. She had a sharp mind and a kind heart, but no matter how much she tried, there was always a wall between her and the others. She began to withdraw into herself, keeping her thoughts and feelings hidden even from her closest friends. She told herself that if she could just fit in, everything would be fine. One fateful day when Ayana was around 18, the tribe's council of elders called for a meeting. It was an event that only happened when something serious was at stake, so the entire village gathered in the central clearing. Ayana had no idea that this meeting would change her life forever. As she stood among the people she had known her whole life, she noticed a strange heaviness in the air. The elders were unusually somber. The eldest among them, a woman named Chief Waya, stood at the front, her gaze steady and full of authority. She addressed the crowd, speaking in a low, commanding voice. Ayana's heart raced as she realized that this meeting was about her. "We have watched the child, Ayana, grow into a young woman. We have seen her strength, but we also see something troubling," Chief Waya said, her words echoing in the quiet clearing. "Her body does not align with the traditions of our people. It is an unnatural shape, a form that disturbs the balance we hold so dear." The words struck Ayana like a blow to the chest. She stood frozen, unable to speak or move. It felt as if the ground beneath her feet had vanished. Her heart pounded in her ears and her breath caught in her throat. She had never thought that her body, the very thing she had been born with, could be seen as a threat to everything she loved. Chief Waya continued, "Our people believe in the harmony of body and spirit. When the body grows outside the accepted form, the spirit is in danger. We cannot ignore this." The other elders nodded in agreement, their faces grave. Ayana felt as if the world was closing in on her. She wanted to shout, to tell them that she hadn't chosen to be different, that she was still the same person inside, but her voice felt trapped in her chest. The other villagers stood in silence, their eyes filled with a mix of pity and curiosity. No one spoke up in her defense. It was as if they too believed she didn't belong. "Because of this, we have decided," Chief Waya's voice broke through Ayana's thoughts. "Ayana must leave. She will be banished from the tribe. Her presence is too much of a disruption to the balance we have worked so hard to preserve." The words rang out like a final sentence, a verdict from which there was no appeal. Ayana's legs wobbled and she felt a surge of hot tears rising in her eyes. Banished. The word kept echoing in her mind. She had been part of this community her entire life, and now, in an instant, it was all gone. Ayana stood there in stunned silence, the tears blurring her vision. She felt like she was drowning in the weight of their rejection. The elders had spoken, and there was no turning back. As the meeting ended, Ayana's world crumbled around her. The tribe that had once been her family, the people she had always loved and admired, had decided she was no longer welcome. The next morning, the elders gave Ayana a small pack of provisions and led her to the edge of the tribe's land. They didn't even say goodbye. No one came to comfort her or offer any words of kindness. She was simply left to wander alone in the wilderness with no idea of where she was supposed to go or what she was supposed to do next. For the first time in her life, Ayana was completely alone. She walked through the thick forest, each step heavy with the weight of what had just happened. She thought about the life she had lost, the friends, the traditions, the sense of belonging. It felt like a cruel joke, a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. She spent days wandering through the wilderness, unsure of where to go. She tried to find solace in the trees and the open sky, but it was hard to feel peace when her heart was breaking. Ayana was used to the harshness of nature, but this emptiness, this deep sense of abandonment, was something she couldn't escape. With each passing day, the pain of being cast out by the very people she had trusted grew heavier. She had nowhere to turn, no place to call home. At times she would sit by a stream or under a tree, listening to the wind rustling the leaves, trying to find some comfort in the sound of the earth. But no matter how much she tried, the loneliness never seemed to fade. She had been banished, rejected, and left to fend for herself in a world that felt cold and indifferent. But even in her darkest moments, Ayana refused to give up. She wasn't just going to survive. She would find a way to thrive, even if it meant doing so alone. The pain of rejection would never fully leave her, but she knew that she had something the tribe didn't see, a strength that came from within, something no one could take away from her. Days turned into weeks as Ayana wandered deeper into the wilderness. The once vibrant forest now felt like a cold and lonely place. With each passing day, her hopes of finding a new community faded, and her heart grew heavier. She had no family left, no tribe, and nowhere to turn. The world felt vast and unforgiving, and Ayana wondered if she would ever find peace again. But she was a survivor. She knew the ways of the forest, how to find food, how to track animals, and how to make shelter from the trees. Her body, the one that had once been rejected by her tribe, was now her strongest asset. Her muscular build, which had been ridiculed by her people, helped her carry heavy loads and endure the hardships of the wild. For the first time in her life, she realized that what she had once seen as a flaw was actually her greatest strength. One afternoon, as Ayana trekked through the dense woods, a sudden rustle in the bushes caught her attention. She stopped, crouching low, her senses on alert. The noise came closer, and within moments, a man emerged from the thicket. Ayana instinctively reached for the small knife she kept on her belt. But before she could make a move, the man raised his hands in a gesture of peace. "Don't be afraid," he said calmly, his voice rough but warm. "I'm not here to harm you." Ayana didn't lower her knife, but she studied the man carefully. He was tall, dressed in rough clothes with the weathered look of someone who spent most of his time outdoors. His face was strong, but his eyes were kind. "Who are you?" Ayana asked, her voice cautious but steady. "I'm Ethan," the man replied. "I live just a few miles away. I saw you walking through the woods and thought you might need some help." Ayana wasn't sure whether to trust him. She had been on her own for so long that the idea of trusting a stranger was almost impossible. But something about Ethan felt different. He didn't seem like the other men she had encountered in her life, those who would use strength or fear to control others. Ethan's presence was calm, almost soothing. After a moment of hesitation, Ayana finally lowered her knife, though she remained on guard. "Why would you want to help me?" she asked. Ethan shrugged. "I've lived on my own for years. I know what it's like to be isolated, to feel like you don't belong. If you need a place to stay, I can offer you shelter. I don't have much, but I can share what I have." Ayana didn't know what to make of his offer. Her first instinct was to refuse, to continue on her own path. But the thought of spending another night alone in the woods was unbearable. She had survived this long, but survival was beginning to feel like a constant battle. Maybe, just maybe, she could trust him. She nodded slowly. "I'll go with you," she said, though she still felt uncertain. Ethan smiled, his face lighting up with a warmth that Ayana hadn't seen in a long time. He turned and motioned for her to follow. As they walked together through the forest, Ethan explained that he owned a large ranch on the edge of the wilderness. It wasn't a grand place, but it was his, and he had made a life there. He spoke about his work, tending to the land, taking care of animals, and the peace he found in living close to nature. Ayanna listened carefully, intrigued by his words. He wasn't like anyone she had ever met. He didn't speak with pride or arrogance, but with a quiet strength that made her feel safe. By the time they reached his ranch, the sun was setting, casting a golden light over the rolling fields. The ranch was a simple place, one large farmhouse, a few barns, and a few scattered outbuildings. It wasn't much, but to Ayanna it felt like a sanctuary. She could feel the weight of the days spent wandering slipping away as she stepped onto the property. Ethan showed her to a small room in the farmhouse. It was simple, with a bed, a small table, and a window that looked out over the fields. It wasn't much, but it was 1,000 times more than she had ever expected to find. "You can stay here as long as you need," Ethan said. "You don't have to go anywhere unless you want to." Ayanna was overwhelmed with gratitude. She had been on the brink of giving up, but now, she had found something she never thought she would: kindness and a place where she could begin to heal. In the following days, Ayanna helped Ethan with the work around the ranch. She wasn't used to being around others, but Ethan was patient with her. He showed her how to tend to the animals, how to fix the fences, and how to grow the crops that fed them. Over time, she became more comfortable and she began to feel a sense of purpose again. It wasn't the life she had once known, but it was a life, one that she could build on her own terms. As the weeks passed, Ayanna started to open up to Ethan. She shared her story with him, the pain of being cast out by her tribe, the loneliness she had endured, and the struggle to find her place in the world. Ethan listened quietly, never judging her, never offering empty words of sympathy. He simply listened and let her speak, and that in itself was enough. One evening, as they sat outside the house watching the stars appear in the sky, Ayanna felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. Ethan had become more than just a stranger offering help. He had become her friend, someone she could trust and rely on. "I never thought I'd find a place like this," Ayanna said softly. "I thought I would always be alone." "You're not alone anymore," Ethan replied gently, "and you don't have to go anywhere unless you want to. You're welcome here always." For the first time in a long while, Ayanna felt a warmth in her chest. She wasn't alone. She had a home, but Ethan's kindness didn't stop there. He soon began to show Ayanna something even more surprising: love. It wasn't immediate, nor was it something he had planned. But over time, as they spent more time together, working side by side and sharing stories, Ethan realized that his feelings for Ayanna had grown deeper. He had come to care for her in a way that went beyond simple friendship. One afternoon, as they stood in the fields, Ethan turned to Ayanna and said, "I've been thinking a lot about this and I want to say something. I care about you, Ayanna, more than I ever expected to." Ayanna's heart skipped a beat. She had always been cautious about trusting people, especially men, but with Ethan it felt different. He hadn't tried to change her or make her fit some ideal. He had accepted her for who she was, and that was something she had never experienced before. "I care about you too," she replied, her voice trembling slightly. "I didn't know what I was looking for, but I think I've found it." From that moment, their bond grew even stronger. They shared a life built on mutual respect, understanding, and love. Ethan's unthinkable act of kindness, offering Ayanna shelter, protection, and a place to belong, had changed both of their lives in ways they never imagined. The decision to stand by her, to protect her, and to offer her a future when everything had seemed lost, wasn't just a simple act of kindness. It was a choice that redefined their futures and gave Ayanna a chance to finally heal. With Ethan by her side, Ayanna discovered that sometimes the unthinkable could be the very thing that changes everything.